Hey everybody, Dan Foster, National Marketing Manager for Pride Seeds, and I'm joined today by Matt Chappell, Market Development Agronomist for Pride Seeds, covering the deep southwest of Ontario from Windsor to London. So Matt, today I'd like to talk to you about and really get into, and there's been lots of discussion on Xtend soybeans, but you've been growing Xtend soybeans now for 3 years. We've had 1 year that they've been commercially produced, but Matt, you've been growing them for 3 years as a seed producer. Tell me a little bit about your experiences you've had with Xtend soybeans.
Well, Dan, up until 3 years ago, we grew a nice mix of IP soybeans and Roundup Ready resistant soybeans. They were an important part of our operation, but you know, the benefits that we quickly started seeing with dicamba resistant soybeans in our rotation, in 2017 we were 100% XRN or Xtend soybeans. So, you know what? We're very confident, we're very pleased with the yield advantage, we love the weed control, it's no looking back.
Tell me about what your weed control experiences have been. What have you been spraying and what kind of timing have you done?
So in corn, a corn, soybean, wheat rotation is typically what we are. In corn we like to Converge XT, we like to spray that early on. In soybeans, we were Roundup until now, but now we really see the value in having that dicamba tank mix burn down and then coming back early post. And then in wheat, we were using Infinity. Infinity has, you know, as you've heard, the best control of glyphosate-resistant fleabane there is, and we think that this is the three products we need to use and continue to use to maximize that weed control.
So you're on some variable soil types. You go from some clays, clay loams into some sands. Why has the Xtend system worked well for you? Or what have you really noticed in the soybeans?
Great question. We typically like to no-till also. We don't like to burn extra fuel. So in those clays, we haven't had a big seed bank of glyphosate-resistant fleabane, but especially on those sand knolls where that weed was really shallow seeded and you know it produces millions of seeds. So that's where we really needed this Xtend system, where we could come in our no-till system, we could control those weeds, knock down those knolls that always seem to produce lots and lots of weeds, lots of flushes all the time. And yeah, it's been ideal on different soil types. It's a easy tank mix option. We can go in and just control what we need to and know we're going to have that residual control and knock down those tough broadleaf weeds, even like thistles.
So you've been going in pre-merge or in a burn down with Xtendimax or with Ingenia and Roundup. And then when would you come in again? Would you come in again with that product, or would you go back to a straight Roundup?
You know what? If I was really concerned with the weather conditions, my window had narrowed for timing before the canopy was about to close, or I was pushing that third trifoliate, I probably would just put Roundup, you know. It's a nice benefit that we are dicamba resistant, but we don't have to use it. Ideally, I would use it. I like to get in before the third trifoliate and come back in with dicamba Roundup tank mixed and know I'm going to extend my residual control into canopy closure.
Now, Matt, you're growing these soybeans in an area where there's lots of vegetables, sensitive crops, there's sugar beets, there's tomatoes. You've been growing them for 3 years. Have you experienced a problem, or what are you doing to make sure you don't experience a problem like that?
Great question. 2015, we planted our first Xtend soybean crop under stewardship. That was along the neighbor's sugar beets. I guess the number one thing was follow the label. We went to our training. We paid attention to the weather the day of, the weather the day after. You know, more or less we were avoiding inversions or drift, those kind of things. And then in 2016, we were across the road from a tomato crop. You know, another big concern because it's a very valuable crop. And I'm pleased to say we did these applications with dicamba in the tank up to second trifoliate successfurly.
Okay, Matt, so you've had great success spraying, it sounds like. Now, there's a few things you mentioned there that maybe we should go over again. So tips.
Ultra coarse nozzles.
Okay, so that's mentioned in a lot of the programs. It's mentioned on the label, those sort of tips, and
Yeah.
those sort of tips only.
That's it.
Can I mix something else in the tank, like a liquid fertilizer or something like that?
You know what? The safest bet is keep it to your Roundup and dicamba, and that's it.
And then you mentioned watching the weather, the day before, the day after, a few days after. You said inversions. What are you saying there?
There's been a lot of great work done in this past growing season showing what an inversion is. And an inversion is, when we have those shifts in temperature from cold to hot, hot to cold. And, spraying dicamba has kind of got us away from what we've been trained to do, where we've wanted to go out and spray early morning or, late evening after supper, when you go from that 85-degree day and then you're dropping down to a 60-degree night. And you create that layer of a dense, heavy air, and you've got a lot of moisture in the air from the humidity of the daytime meeting that cooler air, or a fog layer that's down low. Those are all things that we really want to avoid.
And then finally, rinsing out the sprayer before I go to the next thing. Should we concentrate a little harder on that?
It's one of the most important things with your dicamba stewardship is you really need to triple rinse. We don't need to take this lightly. It's a great tool, and we don't need to spoil it or give anyone a bitter taste by doing a poor job. The guys at OMAF, Mike Cabra and Jason DeVoe, they have been a great demonstration of the injury we can see by not properly tank cleaning.
Okay, so final thing I'd say on that spray thing, there's lots of good information out there on how you're supposed to do it, because we should probably leave a buffer strip versus those sensitive crops that are up next to them as well. So I guess the last question I'd ask you, Matt, you've been growing them for 3 years, you've switched from IPs and straight Roundups. Have you seen a yield advantage to growing Xtends?
You know what, Dan? The biggest yield advantage is in those tough no-till situations where we haven't been able to get in early on and spray prior to planting, and we need to go back. That's when we get that extended control of weeds and a weed-free period, much like in your corn crop. We want to extend that, give those beans no competition early on. That's when we're seeing it. And I really believe that over the past 2-3 years, we are seeing a 2+ bushel yield advantage. And the ease of even harvestability going into fall by not having a late flush, where I think we're really maximizing that canopy closure and controlling those tough broadleafs early on. So,
well, Matt, thanks very much for joining us today. That was a tremendous amount of great information on how to run and how you've worked with the Xtend system over the last 3 years. Pride Seeds offers a full lineup of Xtend soybeans from late end all the way to early end. Our Pride soybeans that are Xtend and in XRN. So thanks, Matt, again for sharing your experience, and we'll talk again soon.